Welcome to the Grow Your Clinic podcast. My name is Ben Lynch. Today, I'm joined by the passionate Annie Strauch. Annie is a business mentor here at Clinic Mastery, a physiotherapist by trade, and leads and owns Performance Medicine, where they specialize in helping performing artists, like singers and dancers, to perform at their best on stages night after night as they tour around the world. Annie is also a mother, and today we get to talk about something near and dear to her heart, which is navigating motherhood, parenthood, being a physiotherapist, and being a clinic owner, and finding the harmony between all three. In particular, you'll see Annie is passionate about stripping back some of the conditioning through peers or family, through your industry, that you might have about navigating motherhood as a professional and especially as a business owner. We uncover some of the things that have helped Annie navigate both, to still have the joy and fulfillment of starting a family, but also the joy and fulfillment of being a business owner and navigating both at the same time. As you'll see for Annie, it started for her all at once, starting a family and starting a business, and that through a whole bunch of challenges which she's been able to navigate. And Annie shares some of the tips and tricks that she's learnt to this day, now as she has 3 beautiful children and still leads a clinic. Let's join the conversation as we uncover how it all began for Annie.
This is the Grow Your Clinic podcast from Clinic Mastery. We help progressive health professionals to lead inspired teams, transform client experiences, and build clinics for good. Now, it's time to grow your clinic.
It's good. It's good. So, Annie, your story as a business owner and as a mother is quite unique. Where did it all begin for you?
Yes, that's right, Ben. So for me, I started my business first, and it was in 2010, and I was very excited about starting my business. And then I really, luckily, fell pregnant, and that was an unplanned pregnancy. And it was, one of the joys of my life, and be like, oh, this is fantastic. Except that I had literally started a business 3 months beforehand and opened a practice and employed a couple of people. Wow. And so I was like, oh, this wasn't part of my plan. Yeah. And for those people who know me, I like planning and I like structure. But in actual fact, getting pregnant, it was one of the best things, because it made me go, right, this whole business thing, this whole motherhood parent thing, it's got to be on the fly, and you have to be agile. And you can have a loose plan, but you've also got to be agile and flexible enough in your thinking to go, okay, this is what I'm doing now. And so that's what happened.
Wow. But did you make that transition quickly? Did it take you a bit of time? Because I know you are one of the best planners. You're so methodical about everything. Did you just okay, well, this is happening, all good, or did it take you some time to adjust?
I think I adjusted relatively quickly because I was well. So I was a fortunate person that was well. Yeah. I didn't have any issues in my pregnancy. And also I took the view of, I have a female body and it's made to grow children, and I'm just going to let it do that. And I'm just going to let it do its thing. So in a way, by thinking that it was good, all I had to do was eat right, get enough sleep, and not drink alcohol, which is pretty easy. That's all good. So by doing those things, I knew that my body was just going to grow a baby. And so I just left my body to do its thing. It was one thing I didn't have to think about. And I know that may not sit that well with a lot of people, but I think that's one thing as women, we should really appreciate, that our bodies are really made for that. And women are so resilient and so tough that in actual fact, we're made for it. So if it does happen to you, just be like, right, cool, I'm just going to let that fly. And then I had to look at the business side of things and go, right, well, how do I navigate running a business and then having a baby? So that was kind of my next step, which I probably hadn't intended to happen so quickly. Yeah. But it did. And I think because of that, I ended up having 3 children in 3.5 years. So all my kids are very close together. And having a business actually facilitated me to do that. I'm not going to say it was easy. There were a lot of sacrifices that I made along the way initially, but I was able to take the time I needed or not take the time, because businesses don't always go to plan. And it meant that I got my team around me straight away. So I think that is the key thing for any person, any woman who's wanting to have a baby, and anyone who owns a business and you're a female business owner, is to get your team around you straight away and create a team. And that's a work team and also a domestic team. And so you've got to have your work team and domestic team so that they work in harmony together.
Right.
And if you can do that straight away, you are ahead of the game. And that's one key thing that I say to people: get your team around you and understand that you can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
You can do a lot. Women can do a lot. And I think that's one thing that I'm really proud of for all the business owners and female business owners in CM. They can do so much. They're like superheroes. And it's about leaning into that and going, nope, I've got this, and getting your plan.
I want to come to the work and domestic team in a moment, Annie. You had started a business, you were 3 months in. We know how hard it is to start a business without going, okay, in the next 9 to 10 months, I'm also going to have a baby. I'm going to start a family. Like that first 12 to 18 months of being in business, it's so hard. You're building your books, you're adding team members, you're trying to get your name out there, understand the nuances of financing and accounting. Like there's so much. How did you navigate like the stress of actually running a business and then also preparing for having a baby and making that transition? What were some of the key decisions or things that you did?
Some of the key decisions that I made were to just make sure I really enjoyed what I did. So I'm super passionate about the performing arts, and I was working in an industry and still do work in an industry I absolutely love. And so I think for me, because I was doing that and I loved what I was doing, that actually made it not really feel like work. It's a very cliche thing to say. And I loved it. I loved working and I loved it. So for me, I was never going to stop working. And that was one of the decisions I made very early, is that I was going to continue to work once I'd had the baby as well. And so for me, I made the decision that, right, well, yes, I'm going to have a child, and that child is going to be amazing. And look, my kids are awesome. But also, you know, I also really enjoy working, and I really enjoy working in my team that I had. It was a small team at the time. And so I needed to work out a way to make that work. And one of the decisions that I made was, well, I didn't want to have 12 months off work. So socially and culturally in Australia, we are conditioned that you need to have 12 months off work. And so for me, I didn't really, once I got pregnant, I was like, what? Why is that? I didn't really understand why that was. And I think when you're younger and ignorance is bliss, you're sort of like, oh, I don't know why people are doing that.
Yeah.
And so I had always intended to return to work relatively soon after I had had my baby, because I organised my team around me. So I had organised daycare, and I'd put the unborn child onto daycare list. And for those women who are wanting to have a baby, you always hear about, oh, I can't get my kids into childcare, so I actually physically can't go back to work if I choose to do so. So many women want to return to work, but can't actually do it because of childcare arrangements. So one thing to do is, if you find out you're pregnant, look up on your council website the local childcare centres that are run by the council, but also the private ones, and put your unborn baby down on that list, because it might take you 12 months to get on that list. So you might actually get on that list when the child's 4 or 5 months old, and that might suit you in terms of returning to work. So that was one of the key decisions, Ben, is that I was like, I'm totally going back to work, and I'm going to work part-time, and I will make that arrangement work for me, because I absolutely love being in my business.
That's a good distinction. We've talked a little bit about this offline. If you're speaking to, and I know over time you've spoken to business owners, clinic owners who are soon to be mothers, and they've got that question or uncertainty around, you know, how much time should I take off? How do you go about answering that or helping someone understand what might be the right time for them?
Yeah, and I think part of how much time should someone take off, it's really personal. That's the first thing to say. Every person is different, and how you respond to your pregnancy and how you respond to having a child and how you feel about that is very different for everybody. What I will say is, it's okay to want to return to work, and that's okay. And I think that's the thing I really want to get through on this, is that if you love your job and you want to return to work earlier than 12 months, earlier than 6 months, 4 months in a part-time capacity or whatever suits you, that's totally fine, because if you have a happy mother, you have a happy baby and you have a happy family. So I think for women who are maybe pregnant or planning on having a baby and wondering what they should do, look at how you want your life to look like immediately after you have the child, and then at 2 months, and then at 4 months, and then at 6 months. And that's a short time frame, but it gives you an idea of what you should think about in those first few months as a business owner. And if you don't have choices, then it's very hard to make the decision you want. And so the choices come around childcare. So do you have childcare available for you, whether that be a family member or whether it be with a childcare, like daycare type situation, or a family daycare situation, or a nanny situation? If you don't actually have that available, your choices are limited. And I would advise all women to be okay with wanting to have some time or some hours during a week that they can spend on themselves or their business, because if you are internally happy, you are so happy with your children. And that is just the key thing. And having your support mechanisms from your partner and making sure that they understand that as well, that you might just want to go into the clinic and go to work for 3 hours, and that's okay, because you're enjoying it and you're keeping your brain going as well. So look at what you want your life to look like if you're planning on having a child and you're a business owner. The other thing to do, so I've said the daycare thing. The other thing to do, a lot of people want their mum and their dad and their parents to look after a child. I would say make sure this is okay with your parents, because what you don't want to do is feel like you're trapping your own parents in a childcare cycle, and then you don't have flexibility. So make sure that you make that arrangement in a way that's really helpful for everybody. And sometimes when you have a baby, the way you want to bring up your child might not be the way that they want to bring up your child. So often having a third party involved isn't a bad thing. And back in the olden days, what does it take a village to raise a child? It takes a village, so it's okay to have a couple of different people help you out, whether it might be a bestie who also has a child and you do some child sitting for each other. You might babysit her child for a while she goes to work for half the day, and vice versa. So really work on your network of people who you love and enjoy spending time with, and who could potentially support you as well.
And Annie, that goes back to the distinction you made around the work team and the domestic team to support at the very beginning. Do you have any more team players there that you found really useful in being part of that village, whether at work or outside of work?
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. So from a domestic side, I'll just speak to this because I spoke about it before.
Yeah.
Having your childcare arrangements organised or booked in, or be aware of the situation within your local council is really important. I would suggest having some really good girlfriends or mates, whoever you hang out with. If they have children or they don't have children, that's okay. Just make sure you're connecting with them on a regular basis, either in a WhatsApp group or a Zoom call, or walk and talks, because you want to be fit, and being fit and healthy and being outside with your kids is really good too. And that just makes you feel, I think the message I'm trying to get across is feel joy when you do this, because often when you have a child, you're tired. So you need to do things that are going to give you joy. And then the other thing would be to get a cleaner. It's okay to get a cleaner. You do not need to feel guilty to have a cleaner, or share the load of the housework with your partner. And sometimes what might happen when, and this can happen, and this happened in my own family. My own family is an instance. My husband and I, we shared everything. And then when we had children, a little switch went on, which was the role model. I went into a traditional do everything, and he went into his traditional breadwinner, even though I was still working. And that was nobody's fault. It was just something that accidentally happened. And so making sure that you have a discussion before you have a child with your partner about expectations around sharing activities, even if you aren't at work and they are at work as well. So making sure you have that expectation set up before you have a child, because it's very difficult to have that discussion when everyone's really tired and you've been up for 3 hours in the middle of the night.
Yes.
So it sounds all very real and very raw, but is just the way it is. Get your shopping delivered, your groceries delivered to you. That's really awesome. Or click and collect, so you don't have to spend hours in a shopping centre, or in one of the major supermarkets, potentially with a child strapped to your chest or in the trolley, that's really helpful as well. And the thing to understand when you have a child and you're a business owner, I'll come to the work team in a minute,
yep.
But the first 5 years may actually be a cost neutral or a cost negative exercise. And what I mean by that is you are investing a lot in your family, and sometimes financially if you have a cleaner and you do online shopping and then you have childcare as well, and you think, well, what's left for me? What money is left for me? And what I would say is what you're doing when you are setting up that environment, you're actually creating a space for you to progress your career while you were doing that, so that in 5-10 years you don't have that big pay gap. You've got some super, you've still maintained your skills, you've kept your social connections, you've kept your professional connections. So it's really important to, if it works for you, to keep some form of connection with your professional life and be okay with sometimes you're just not going to make heaps of money initially. And I know that I've got some friends and colleagues, and I have continued to work. I'm just using me as an example because it doesn't. Yeah. What I've done doesn't work for everybody. And now I have chosen this pathway because I really love my job and I love my family. So I've chosen this pathway. But my ability to progress my career and the business has been probably because I've had kids and I've kept the connection with the professional community and made it in a way where I can actually have time with my kids, but also have time with the clinic. So that speaks to that business team or your work team, I suppose, rather than a business team. Would you like me to speak to that, Ben?
Yeah, I do. And just one thing to pick up, Annie, and I actually heard it in a session the other day when I was working with one of our wonderful members you've also worked with over time. And there was a little Annie quote that came out, which was, I choose to do this versus I have to do this. Yes. And that started to come up for me then, just as you were talking. You said, this is my story, this is how I've done it. But if there's kind of a principle that I get from a lot of the stuff that you share, Annie, is I'm making a decision to do this. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think choice is freedom. That doesn't mean your choices are easy, but it gives you freedom. Yeah. So I chose to end up having 3 kids in 3.5 years, okay? But I had the freedom to do that because I'd set the business up in a way that allowed me to be my own boss, in a sense. And I'll use one example that was a real pivotal moment in my career and my business's growth. In 2013, I was giving birth to my second daughter, and then I had at that time one other physio, massage therapist, a couple of receptionists, and I said I'm going to just take literally a couple of weeks off because I was just I'd organise myself to go and do a couple of shifts with our contract work. I did take longer time. I didn't spend a lot of time in the clinic, but this other physio, they actually quit 6 days after I had my second child. That was really hard because that was the person who was keeping the physio side of things going. And so what I chose to do, I chose to go back to work, but I did close the clinic for a period of time to wait until my 6-day-old daughter was 6 weeks old, and then I put her into daycare, and I chose to return to work to keep the clinic going. Yeah. I'm going to say it wasn't my preference, but it was my choice, because during that time it made me crunch my numbers. I really had to understand my numbers, and I had to pay rent. So I had to understand how much I needed to earn so I could pay my rent until my lease was going to be up. And then it made me look at, do I really love what I'm doing? Do I want to continue doing this? Because if I do want to continue doing this, I can't keep doing it like this, because I'm actually a 3-legged stool. And if one leg is taken out from under you, you fall over. And that's exactly what happened to me in 2013. So I said, I can't keep doing it like this. So I either go big or I go home. And so in a way, it was the development, and that was a pivot point for my business. And it was a really stressful time. But I made the choice, and I had the ability to choose because I knew my numbers and I crunched my numbers, and it gave me the freedom to make that choice by looking at my finances and then looking at what I needed to invest to then create the next 2.0 or 1.0 or whatever you want to call it of my business. And so that's talking about choice. So I made that choice. Then that speaks to you have choices and you have preferences, and sometimes the choices you make are not always going to be easy and they may not be your preference, but it might be something that you want to do because you've done all the research and you realize, no, I know this is difficult, but this is something that I actually really want to do. And that's actually okay to do as well. Because one thing when you have kids, people might say to you, oh, you may as well just give it all up. But then what do you do if you just give it all up? And sometimes it is easier. It seems easier. I'm putting inverted commas, easier to give it all up. But this is where we speak about being engaged in work, Ben. Yeah. Women are most likely to return to work after having a baby if they're engaged and they enjoy their work and they feel valued. So if you can create that as a business owner where you're engaged and you're enjoying what you're doing, then you're more likely to return and give yourself freedom, financial independence. That's the plan. That's the long-term plan, to have financial independence, but also have the independence to continue your profession as well.
Well, it speaks to not only just being an owner and perhaps starting a family, but employers, people who are clinic owners who employ women who are about to have a family, or men who are about to start a family, and the changes that are about to happen in their work role. But in particular, that engagement, Annie, and that time off. As an employer, speaking with someone, what are some of the considerations you have, some advice for the clinic owners out there who maybe have someone on their team that's about to have a baby, and helping them prepare before and then nurturing them once that child has arrived?
Absolutely. So I think the first thing is get really excited. This is super exciting. Yeah. Like when a team member says, I'm pregnant, be like, oh, it's amazing. Make them feel excited, because they are going to be stressing about telling you that they are pregnant. They might tell you that they're pregnant really, really early, like they've literally just walked out of the shower and they've told you. You're like, okay, great, thanks. That's super early. So you often know very early because they want to let you know. So I think you've got to be like, thank you for letting me know. I'm so excited. This is brilliant. If you have other thoughts, walk away and make a silly face to a corner. Don't do it to your team member, okay? Because often when people are pregnant, the inevitable is there will be some time off because they've got to have a child, and so that's going to create disruption for your clinic. And so this actually gives you a really great opportunity to make sure you invest in this person so that they want to come back and work for you and work with you and work in your clinic.
You spoke about the engagement side of things being super important to allow people the opportunity to return and to enjoy and to want it. What are some of the things, Annie, that you found have been useful to keep that person engaged in the lead up to them maybe having some leave and then returning back? Like, what are some of the things you practically do or conversations you have?
Yeah, I think practically you need to keep that practitioner in the lens of a practitioner.
Right.
They are not all of a sudden a pregnant woman. And that is a distinction that I make, because I know myself being a woman, sometimes you go, oh, they're pregnant, I'm not going to ask them to do that. Why not? Why can't they do that? Of course they can do that. They are still a practitioner, first and foremost. And so don't not give them things or tasks or opportunities in the business because they are pregnant, because you might be projecting your own feelings or your own beliefs or the way your family was brought up. If you had more of a traditional mother-father role, don't project your beliefs onto your practitioner or your team member.
Right.
And so making sure that you check yourself and that you treat that person as the professional that they are, and also tell them, say, look, this is amazing, awesome, I'm so excited for you. This doesn't really change anything because you're still amazing and you're an awesome practitioner. So just keep growing that baby. And so in my team, I'm a female, so it's probably easier for me to say, and my team have seen me have children and the way I integrate my children into my work. And I say to the practitioners, look, I'm so excited for you. I'm just going to let you know I'm not actually going to speak to you about your pregnancy every single day. Is that okay? And they're like, oh, thank God. Because if all you do is talk about, oh, look at you, you're getting so big. Oh, gosh, you're really showing now. Oh, look at you. If that's the only discussion you can have with a practitioner when they're pregnant, they don't feel valued. you feel like just a pregnant person and no one's seeing you for the person that you are. And I think that's really important. And I know in my own experience that quite often happened. And so as a practitioner, my advice to practitioners who are pregnant is don't always talk about your pregnancy with your patients or your clients as well. So making sure that you still refocus, because your clients are going to want to ask you about it all the time. And also in a team and as a business owner, other team members are going to want to ask the practitioner about it all the time. But feel free to reflect it back and bring it back to the team members, bring it back to your boss, bring it back to your clients, and actually change that focus, because it's really important that you stay professionally engaged. And that's one thing that I think, in my business, I actually, it wasn't a rule, it was a guideline not to touch a pregnant woman's stomach if you haven't asked them or checked with them. And it's not the first thing you do when you see someone and come up and rub their stomach. And I said that very overtly. And my team just said, hey guys, so we just don't touch people's body if we haven't got permission.
Mm.
So they're the really practical things you can do.
Yeah.
And just putting some guidelines around it, or if you're noticing that person who's pregnant is getting really rammed with all these pregnancy questions, and sometimes people are just like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm just doing my job. Protect that person, engage in a different conversation, change the conversation with the people they're talking to. I think you're well within your rights to do that as well.
Yeah. Annie, for those who are maybe looking to have a little bit of time off, it seemed like you were able to just keep on going, and that was your choice fairly soon after to get back on the tools or in the business. For those who have often said to me, I'm looking to have maybe a month away from the business, as an example, I'm going to pretty much be off the grid. But then it's a great opportunity for me to actually transition off of the tools in a way. Like, I am the main billing practitioner. So in terms of establishing that team to support the continuity of care of clients, but also keep that revenue up as I take leave, I'm now transitioning more into a business owner role or a pure business owner role. What are some of the high value tasks that I can be doing as a business owner, perhaps that I'm able to do when I've got a young one that's a couple of weeks old? Maybe I can work around their sleep, etc. What are some of the things that you focused on in some of your, just after welcoming a new child into the family, what are some of the business things that you focused on during those periods away from the clinic?
Great. So for me, those times are so creative. I had space in my brain to think about other things. So think about projects you've always been wanting to complete, and you've got a little bit of time now to maybe put a bit of creativity into those projects, whether it be a system or it be writing a paper, or it be writing a course for something that you've always wanted to teach a course on, something that you've never had time to write the course. Maybe now's a good time to get some of the material down. So I would recommend to take the time, if your creative brain is there, to get that stuff down on paper or in your computer. And then also take some time to look and understand your numbers for your business. I generally recommend people do that before they have the child. So in that probably 3 months before you have a child, if you're transitioning, that's when you start doing your transfer of trust. So you're transferring your patients or your clients to another practitioner, and you are having that practitioner be in with you as much as possible, observing you, listen to how you speak. And so then you build that trust, and you also then trust your practitioner who you're transferring your clients to as well. And so you start that relatively early, and that's one thing I'd recommend that you do. And then plan for probably seeing no patients about 3 to 4 weeks before you're actually due to have the baby. So I know I've sort of not answered the question there, but I've gone to just before. And the reason I say that is because you want to have the opportunity to have some time off the business. So say the week before you're due, you're actually not in the business at all, or the 2 weeks or 3 weeks before, you're not in it at all. So you can actually see what's going on, and you still have the flexibility without a child to get in there if you need to, make some changes, and you've got some agility to make changes with practitioners, timetabling, those sorts of things, and set up the expectations for the practitioners of what they need to be independent in the month that you're off the grid. So if you've set that up first, then you have the freedom and you've got the creative brain. But if you don't set that up first, then you're always checking on and you can be micromanaging. So in that last 2 months, you want to wean your patients and transfer them to another practitioner. Yes. Then you've got about 3 or 4 weeks, hopefully, unless you have the baby early, to have a bit of time to look at some of the systems and maybe change some of the systems if you need to, so some front of house systems, so reception systems, timetabling systems, and then you've got a little bit of time to take your foot off the gas before you have the child. But that might be when you go, right, what's next? And then you can plan for that month of freedom in a way, like you don't have to be locked in the clinic. But what I would suggest is after that first 4 weeks, before you have the child, have your one-on-ones booked in with your team members for 4 or 6 weeks, whether it be a Zoom call, a phone call, and, touching base. So you've got some touch points and your team will be like, oh, wow, that's amazing that you've popped in. But it's really important that they still feel valued because you're still ultimately their boss, even though you've had a child. So you do need to be able to be there for them. Mm-hmm. But if you set it up initially and you set up so you've got a month of freedom and a month of downtime where you don't want to be involved in the business, you've got to make sure all your basic front of house reconciling, who's doing the banking, who's actually picking up the laundry, who, if the internet goes down, who are we actually calling? Are we calling you or are we calling someone else? Because sometimes in a smaller business, you're the IT person, you're the laundry person, and you're also the finance person. So if you don't want to have those responsibilities, make sure that someone understands that it's their responsibility as well beforehand. And they're the nuts and bolts to think about before you have your baby.
Yeah, great distinction. I know we're going through recently with someone in our community who's just a couple of weeks away. How exciting for them. And we're doing a stock take of all the tasks essentially and looking at who's doing them, when are they doing them, who are they reporting to, etc. So just getting that down onto a piece of paper and using a system sounds pretty good. As for a week and a daily rhythm, Annie, just sort of that period after having a child, when you're trying to set up some sort of rhythm to do some work and maybe you've got bubs there with you and you're kind of working around their schedule, etc. Do you have any tips or pearls that have allowed you to still maybe find a little bit of flow and productivity, especially in the early days as well? Depending on how well of a sleeper maybe Bubs is, it can be different for everyone. I can appreciate that. Any tips for finding some level of flow in your day or in your week when you are maybe working on the business, say from home?
Yeah, absolutely. My first tip would be no matter how dark and bad the night was, and no matter if you only got 1 hour sleep, still get up, have a shower, brush your hair, and put something other than pajamas on. It is actually so important. And so it just helps you find some rhythm and some routine. And that's important. And if you've had a really crummy night, and in the middle of the night, never make a decision in the middle of the night. Nights can be long and they can be dark and they can be lonely, particularly if your partner's having a sleep and you're breastfeeding and the baby won't settle and whatever. So never make a decision in the middle of the night, okay, by yourself. And always, no matter how bad your night's been, always get up, have a shower, brush your hair, get some clothes on and get your baby into your pusher and go for a walk. Get outside, get your brain going, get your body going, get some natural endorphins going. And if you make a routine of always going to the local cafe, then you've got some social connections as well. So they are the key things. If it's your first child, in that first week, go out to a cafe or go and get a takeaway. Even though it's going to be frightening and scary and you've got this little human and you don't know what you're doing, make yourself do it, because the first time you've done it, then you never have to do the first time again. And then it's done. And then you go, oh, right, okay, cool. I'm not chained to my house. So don't let yourself be chained to your house and find flow. So for me, when I had my first child, I would go to a local cafe every single day. I was also studying. And so I would go to my cafe every day and I'd sit there for about 3 hours and I'd have a lunch or I'd have coffees and do my breastfeeding and all that sort of thing. And I had my eldest in the little, I think I just had her in like a baby Bjorn, and I would study and I knew I had 3 hours and I would just do so much work. I was so productive and I felt great because was in the community and had a local connection. So that is something to do. Find a place where you can get your flow on. My other pearl would be, my first maternal health nurse always said to me, you can't teach a child a routine under 6 months old. This was the most liberating thing I had ever heard, because I went, awesome, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And it was fantastic because, I had the baby Bjorn, or like this little sling thing. I would pop my eldest in, we'd just go walking, and she was able to sleep wherever. So this is me who loves structure. I actually was so unstructured. People were like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm great, because I didn't push anything onto the child, because they're just an infant. You need to feed them when they're hungry. You need to change their nappy when you need to change their nappy. People always listen to me say that and say, oh, really easy for you, Annie. I said, no, well, my second daughter was one of those children that never slept. So I've had all the different types of children, but even with my second daughter, I had some really long nights with her. I would still always get up, and for me, I'd put my game face on, so I always would put makeup on, even if I wasn't really going out. And so my husband thought that was really bizarre, because I didn't used to wear makeup. And I said, it just makes me ready to go. So it made me feel ready for the day. So they would be my tips. Get the thing that makes you feel good. And if it means listening to Lady Gaga in your AirPods or whatever, and you go for a walk every day with your kid, go and do that. And then it'll give you some freedom to do the creative things and enjoy what you're doing.
Annie, I love it. I've always loved the passion whenever you talk, but especially about this topic. I know it comes from a real first-hand experience, but also perhaps challenging some of the conditioning that you spoke about at the very start. It's like, hey, actually have a think about it. And two key things stand out for me, which you just touched on, which is, do you enjoy it? And find that joy in it. It's a wonderful time of life. Yes, there's challenges. Yes, there's sleepless nights. Yes, there's stuff in the business also to deal with. And you did it as well, 12 months into starting a business, which is incredible. So I love that the engagement, find the engaging parts of your business. Maybe that also called the question how you were setting up your business and where it was going, a real catalyst for defining where you were taking it and finding that joy in what you're doing and in your work. So very empowering messages for employers, for employees, wherever they are in their own journey. I think someone can take various snippets out of this and use it to empower their direction with family and business. So thank you so much for sharing so openly, so candidly about your own journey, and also giving some practical insights as to how to navigate some of the challenging things about business, but also parenthood, and the two combined.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on, Ben. It's been absolutely, as you said, I'm very passionate about it, and I love helping women find different ways to think about things, and also business owners and men and partners of people having babies, that there are other ways to do things, and asking why and questioning is a really great way to make sure that you do find the joy in what you're doing, and you're able to contribute to yourself. I think first and foremost, yourself, so you feel good, but contributing to your team if you have a team, and contributing to your family as well. I think that provides value for people. And I think in this community, if women feel valued and you feel valued, then you are more likely to put in and lean in, and you get out what you put in to a certain degree as well.
Beautiful words, Annie, and so practical as well. Thank you for sharing. And for everyone who's listening, you can head along to clinicmastery.com for all of the show notes. And if you are preparing for a family, or you've started a family and you're wondering how you can set up that work team and that domestic team, you're looking for some ideas on tasks, etc., go along to the Assess Your Clinic, and that can give you a really good framework to assess where your clinic's at and give you a good roadmap of some of the things that you can work on in your business as well, whilst also managing life outside of business and intertwining them so beautifully that they work harmoniously. We'll see you on another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast very soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Grow Your Clinic podcast. To find out more about past episodes or how we can help you, head to www.clinicmastery.com/podcast, and please remember to rate and review us on your podcast player of choice. See you on the next episode.